If Jesus were the king of the Jews, why would the Jews want him dead? The fact that the Rome says this is Jesus, the king of the Jews, and calls it the accusation, explicitly states in no uncertain terms that Rome is responsible for putting Jesus to death, and put Jesus to death because he was seen as an insurrectionist. He's not the king. He's not your king. The emperor in Rome is your king. The whole idea that the Jews had to get rid of this Jesus is bogus to begin with. And then it says that he was buried with the wicked. No, he was buried in a rich man's tomb.
Yep.
They got it reversed. Oops.
Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT, the Twisted New Testament with Rabbi Stewart, the man better over in the Big H, Houston, Texas. Welcome back. I really wanted to say it.
Yeah, I know you do. You're just dying to every week.
No, I should do it every once in a while, just so the new people can, get their belly full of it too.
Yeah, great.
No, I won't do that. I won't do that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, very good. Okay. All right. So you picked it.
Yes, I picked it. You're going to want to bring up Matthew 27, beginning with 15.
All right. Matthew 27:15. That's
right.
Good to know. All right. I should have asked you that, but these are the things I should be doing before we start.
This is the reason why I picked this is because it's come up a couple of times just in the last few days about the Jews killed Jesus.
Right.
And they say that Jesus died for their sin. We are not responsible, but if we were responsible, they should be thanking us, because only by killing Jesus could that enable Jesus to die for their sin.
Right.
Right.
Okay, Matthew 27.
Matthew 27, beginning with verse 15.
I got so many ads popping up and I can't get rid of them. It's for this Bible Gateway crap. Matthew 27. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
27 and 15.
Right. This is basically the end of the trial or whatever. And they're about to crucify Jesus.
There we go. Okay. It's taking a while because we got so many adjustments on this website. I don't like it. I'm getting to where I don't like it anymore. Okay, 27:15. And let me make it a little bit larger so it's a little bit easier for everybody to see. Just a little bit. Now the feast of Governor was want to release unto the people a prisoner.
Whom they would.
Okay.
Now, that is our first question.
Okay.
Why in the world would they think they had to release, or wanted to release, or would be compelled to release, or thought it would be in their best interest to release a criminal because the Jews wanted them to? Why in the world would Rome feel in any way, shape, or form even a hint of a need to release a prisoner? Why were they prisoners? They're prisoners because they're doing stuff illegal against the state.
Right.
And if they were going to be crucified, according to Tacitus, Josephus, and Philo, crucifixion was reserved for insurrectionists, people who wanted to overthrow the Roman government. So if somebody's an insurrectionist, you don't let them go free. So the whole thing is just obviously made up to begin with. All right, so put the text back up.
Okay.
All right, so that was verse 15. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom will you that I release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ?" For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. The whole idea that the Jews had to get rid of this Jesus is bogus to begin with. Okay,
right.
First and foremost, remember that the vast majority of Jews didn't live in Israel, didn't live in Jerusalem, couldn't have cared less what was going on there, except maybe an annual tax, a gift, what's it called, tithe, whatever, okay, that they may have given to the temple. Okay, but by and large, that wasn't where their life was. They would not have even heard about Jesus for months if they were even interested in anything that happened in Israel or Jerusalem. So this whole story is just basically bogus. The chief priests and elders would not have cared. Okay. Well, actually, there's one way they would have cared, but we'll get to that in a minute. But remember what they always say about, which we talked about last week, I think, about Isaiah 53. Although he had done no violence.
Right.
Well, what precedes that? Okay, he's killed even though he did no violence. But Jesus did violence, and that's what brought attention to him. Rome realized he had a following, which is too much competition for Rome. They were bloodthirsty. They would not abide any kind of competition or anybody even thinking to rebel against Rome. And so it's because he had done the violence in the temple that brought attention to himself, and for which he was crucified. Okay. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife said to him, saying, "Have you nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him." So now you have a mystical thing happening on Jesus's behalf, where he's called a just man because, the New Testament is a Christian text. Okay, and in this mystical thing, his Pilate's wife says, don't have anything to do with him. Stay away from him. Okay, but the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. Again, it's trying to show the evil of the leaders of the Jewish people. So the chief priests and elders are telling their fellow Jewish community to choose Barabbas. Okay, the governor answered and said to them, "Whether of the two will you that I release unto you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ?" They all say unto him, "Let him be crucified." And the governor said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they cried out the more, saying, "Let him be crucified." When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, "I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it." Okay, now before we go on, let's talk about these few verses. Okay, more than anything, this is why Christians believe that the Jews killed Jesus. Why? Because the Jews could have chosen Jesus to save him, but instead they chose Barabbas. So even though Rome was going to kill him anyway, even though Rome tried him and found him guilty of insurrection, and which we'll get to more of that in a few minutes, okay, it's the Jews' fault because they could have saved him, but they didn't. Okay, now, to show how even more stupid this is, okay, take a look at verse 25. Then answered all the people and said, "His blood be on us and on our children." Does that make any sense to anybody? Does that have any kind of understanding of human nature, parents' nature, that they would actually say, contrary to what the Bible tells us, by the way, that future generations bear the guilt of our sin? Okay, does it make sense that any parent who loves their child is going to say, okay, let our children suffer for the sin which we are now committing by having this innocent, loving, perfect man named Jesus crucified? Remember, our Bible is the one who said, no man shall be put to death for the sins of his child, no child will be put to death for the sins of his parent. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin, which means future generations do not inherit the guilt for sins committed by previous generations. And two, no one else can die for your sin, therefore Jesus can't die for your sin. Deuteronomy 24:16, as I think we all know. So what kind of logical sense does it make that the Jews are going to say, "His blood be on us and our children"? Let our children suffer for our sin, when it's against the Jewish religion based on biblical verses. That's only one of them that says that that our kids should have our sin. Okay, there are so many problems with this narrative. It's not funny. Okay, verse 26. Then released he Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. And can you move this up a little bit? Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus to the common hall and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. By the way, anytime you have anything in the New Testament which says, this was done in order to fulfill, okay, it's automatically suspect, because it means they're intentionally doing something to make it look like Jesus fulfilled a scripture, and it lends itself to faking. Okay. Another thing I'm going to point out, even though it's not really our topic, and that is they scourged him. They put a crown of thorns on his head that would ruin his skin, that would cut him. You've seen Christian pictures of bleeding. So
he's blemished.
He's blemished. Okay. But that's not really our topic. Okay. Verse 30, and they spit upon him and took the reed and smote him on the head. And after that they had mocked him. They took his robe off from him and put his own raiment on him and led him away to crucify him. As they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. By the way, if you take a look at the Gospel of John, it goes out of its way to say Jesus carried his own cross. So contradicting the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John contradicts what Matthew, Mark, and Luke say, that Simon of Cyrene bore his cross for him. And when they were coming to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull, they gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall. Again, another way to show how bogus this whole thing is. Some places he's doing vinegar with gall. Sometimes he's doing pure vinegar. Another gospel say it was vinegar with myrrh. They can't make up their mind what they gave him to drink. And they crucified him and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet. Now I can't see it. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. I'm not even sure that's an accurate quote. Be that as it may. And sitting down, they watched him there, and set up over him, over his head, his accusation, written, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Again, more proof that the Jews did not kill Jesus. Well, one proof we didn't talk about is everybody on planet Earth who knows anything at all about the Bible, about the people of Israel, about history, the Jewish way of putting somebody to death, a death penalty, is called stoning. Crucifixion is purely a Roman way of execution. Yep. And as we said, it was reserved for insurrectionists. And when it says in verse 37, they set up over his head his accusation, it means this is why the person under this sign was crucified. Why is this is Jesus, the King of the Jews, an accusation? What's the accusation? It means that if this is your king instead of the emperor in Rome, this is not only what's going to happen to the supposed king of yours, this is also what's going to happen to you. So if Jesus were the King of the Jews, why would the Jews want him dead? The fact that the Rome says this is Jesus, the King of the Jews, and calls it the accusation, explicitly states in no uncertain terms that Rome is responsible for putting Jesus to death, and put Jesus to death because he was seen as an insurrectionist. He's not the king. He's not your king. The emperor in Rome is your king. Okay. Then were there two thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and another on the left, and they that passed by reviled him, wagging their heads. I don't even know what that means. The only time I know of anybody wagging their head is when they're going, That's a real shame. I don't even know what that means.
Well, one thing to point out here is Isaiah 53:9 says that his death was with the wealthy, and here it says his death was
he
with
died
two
with the
thieves.
wealthy. No, he was with the crucified. And then it says that he was buried with the wicked. No, he was buried in a rich man's tomb.
Yeah.
They got it reversed. Oops. All right. So the reason why Christians say that the Jews killed Jesus is explicitly because of this passage in Matthew, his blood be on us and our children, okay, which never would have happened. And the proof that this was not the Jews' fault, not the Jews, going after Jesus, is because it was a Roman form of execution, and it's explicitly called, and they put an accusation above his head. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. By the way, we're not going to go into it. It's not the point of what we're doing now. But each of the four Gospels cannot agree on how the accusation above Jesus' head, how it read.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. This is Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Each Gospel writer has a different text for how that accusation read. So...
But ironically, it does say it would be a threat to the Roman kingdom because the Roman kingdom has a king, and if he's going to be a king, then that means that was them slapping Christians in the face. Here's your king. You say is going. You're going to.
And if this is who you think your king is, this is what's going to happen to that king, and this is what's going to happen to you for believing he was the king instead of the emperor in Rome.
Yeah. Right.
So, and again with Tacitus, Josephus, and Philo, stating that, first of all, stating that crucifixion was reserved for insurrectionists, people rebelling against Rome. One more thing I forgot to talk about, and that is the New Testament whitewashes Pontius Pilate. The description of Pontius Pilate in every single historian of that period, he is a bloodthirsty, rule with an iron fist kind of a ruler of Judea. Okay, taking his lesson from the Greeks, okay, from Antiochus Epiphanes, okay, if there was a breath, let's say you go into a square and there's one man in one corner who's preaching against Rome, okay, Pilate would have everything sealed off for that square and kill every man, woman, and child in that square. And he was the I can't think of the word, the leader of Judea for 10 years, which is a lot longer than most of the other leaders that Rome set over Judea. But the reason why he got called back to Rome at the end of that 10-year period is because he was too bloodthirsty. He was creating more problems than he was solving by the number of Jews he was killing, murdering. So there's just so much about the supposed trial of Jesus and the crucifixion of Jesus and the elements of the story and the disagreements of the Gospels on the subject that, seriously, none of it can be taken seriously. None of it can be taken seriously. And as you've heard me say, I think, I don't see how anybody can take anything of the New Testament seriously because of the contradictions between all of the stories, the Gospels, and the book of Acts.
Mm-hmm.
So, almost every year, not every year, but almost every year, we take a look at the passion narrative from the arrest through the supposed resurrection of Jesus and show all the various disagreements. There's like 30 plus disagreements in the passion narrative of Jesus alone. I mean, it's overwhelming. So I don't see how anybody can take it seriously. But whatever. Okay.
So go over it again, what it says, because you mentioned this before in verse 46. 46. Eli, lama sabachthani.
About the ninth hour. Okay, yes. 46. And about the ninth hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? No, that's not what it says. But we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, first of all, it says about the ninth hour. Offhand, old man memory, I can't remember which gospel it is, but another gospel says it was after the sixth hour, not the ninth hour. That's a 3-hour difference. Okay, as we divide up the day now. Okay, but then it says, he cried with a loud voice saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's not what that says. First of all, if it said, which it does in a different gospel, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, there's a difference between Eli, Eli, and Eloi, Eloi. Eli is Hebrew. There is no reason to believe that this is a combination of 2 words from the Hebrew and 2 words from the Aramaic. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani is Hebrew, and it does not mean, my God, why have you forsaken me? In the Hebrew, it is supposedly a quotation from one of the Psalms, 22, and the Psalms are in Hebrew. There's no Aramaic in the Hebrew. And the Hebrew doesn't say, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. It says, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani.
There we go. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, azavtani. Right?
Okay, azavtani in the Hebrew. So what does Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani mean in Hebrew? Since it's not Eli, Eli, lama azavtani, what does it really mean in Hebrew? It means, my God, why have you ensnared me?
Oh.
And I used to remember the...
Like trapped, like why have you trapped me?
Trapped, like, ensnared. I used to remember the Strong's number for the Sabach, Samech Bet Kaf, I think. I'd have to look it up again. Okay, but the root is ensnare, entrap. Okay, now, if you take a look at, I think it's Mark, where Jesus is saying where Jesus is saying Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani.
Mark 15:34, I think.
Thank you. Eloi, Eloi is in fact Aramaic. Therefore, there's only reason to believe that the whole phrase is Aramaic. And indeed, in Aramaic, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani does in fact mean, my God, why have you forsaken me? So, one more thing out of the gospel narratives about the crucifixion, burial, whatever, of Jesus, crucifixion, they don't agree with each other. They got it all wrong. Okay, 35. And some of them that stood by when they heard it said, behold, he calls Elijah. In this translation, Elias is how they say the word Elijah. Why in the world, if Jesus were the Son of God, or was divine or divinely inspired, or what's their line about the Holy Spirit? Why would he call Elijah the prophet?
Because Elijah is supposed to be the forerunner. And since now he's fixing to meet his fate, he's like, wow, maybe he knew the scriptures enough to know that Elijah is supposed to come and announce him, but he hasn't done that yet, and he's fixing to die. He's probably freaking out.
Well, the fact that he says he's calling Elijah, okay, well, the Gospels say that John the Baptist was actually Elijah.
But he denied it.
And John the Baptist himself is asked, are you Elijah? He says, no.
Okay, here we go. Touch this real fast. Verse 38 and 37 and 38. I think that's pretty dramatic.
Okay. 37, and Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion which stood over against him saw that he cried out and gave up the ghost, he said, truly this man was the Son of God.
Where in TaNaCh does it say that if someone dies and the veil of the temple gets torn, then that's the proof that he's the Son of God? That's so stupid.
Why are they claiming that the veil of the temple was cut in half? Because it's showing the end of the need for the temple, because now you have an all-time, forever and ever, for every human being ever existing, for every sin that ever happened, a sacrifice. Therefore, the whole temple becomes useless, and that's why it ripped.
Yep.
Of course, is there any record at all that the veil split? No. Is there any reason to believe? Who was in the temple that saw this? I mean, it's just this whole narrative, like I think the whole New Testament, is just ludicrous.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to watch one of my videos and it says members only, that's only temporary. All my videos are free. They eventually become public, but if you want immediate, unedited access with limited ads, you'll have to join the YouTube channel for $5 a month. This can only be done through YouTube. Also, if you have found this channel helpful and this has blessed you or your family members in helping bring you out of idolatry, I would love to have your support. Please consider donating to this channel directly. That would be pretty awesome. Donations can be done through PayPal, Patreon, or through snail mail. The links to all are added in the video description below. You can also click this link and it will take you straight to my website with a donate button, which leads you right through PayPal. Thank you once again for your kindness and consideration for supporting this work. Blessings for you, your family, and your home. Shalom.
There it goes. Okay, so right there.
By the way, just real quick, I see it at 822. JIB Jib, not sure if that's initials or a nickname. Didn't Alexander Jannaeus crucify his enemies? Why would he use a foreign form of execution? Why would he call himself Alexander Jannaeus? Why would he make a Greek name? Why would he take a Greek name if he was all that Jewish? Clearly, by choosing Alexander Jannaeus, he is so assimilated into the Hellenist culture that of course he's going to use a foreign form of execution. He probably doesn't even know what a Jewish form was.
See, here's another contradiction, too, because right here in verse 5 of 15, it says, let me pull it back up. It says, here it says, but Jesus yet answered nothing, so Pilate marveled, to kind of match Isaiah 53. But the other gospel says that he said, which one of you guys just kicked me or hit me or slapped me or whatever?
Yeah.
So it's like these two don't match up.
So little of this actually matches up. Oh, but they'll say, when two witnesses see a car wreck, they get the color of the car wrong. Well, first of all, this is supposed to be all divinely inspired by the Spirit, the Holy Spirit. So if they disagree, maybe they each have their own Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So let's discuss Barabbas for a moment. Barabbas.
Barabbas.
Son of the Father.
Son of the Father.
So the idea with Yom Kippur, not Passover, which Passover would be Easter. Yom Kippur is Day of Atonement.
It would make more sense if it was
would
Yom
make
Kippur.
more sense, not Passover, not Easter, which is this Passover story. But even still, the problem lies that with Yom Kippur, the goat that they set free, which in this case I guess would be Barabbas, that's where the sins would be laid on the head of that goat. So the sins would be, so Barabbas would have bore the sins of the people, not Jesus. Jesus would have been the sacrificial lamb. Barabbas would have been the one that they laid the sins on and sent off into the wilderness by a fit man. So you got more contradictions there too.
Oh, that's brilliant. I never even noticed that before. If they were setting this up as Yom Kippur, then Barabbas would be the goat that gets led into the wilderness.
The scapegoat, yeah.
Miriam Levinson points out, this is 821. No, wait. Where'd it go? I'm sorry, 829. That Psalm 22:2 in the Chabad TaNaCh uses the word forsaken. Right. Why have you forsaken me? That's the azavtani. That's what it says. But any Hebrew should say forsaken. Okay? But that's not what Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani means in the Hebrew. In the Hebrew, it's azavtani. See, 23rd Street, okay, the Christian pastors used to describe the magnitude of what took place in the day, but there's method to their madness. The reason why the veil ripped is because it shows that the entirety of the temple was no longer necessary because Jesus had died for their sins. So the ripping of the veil, okay, is for that purpose. No longer valid, no longer useful, no longer needed.
You know, and the timing, that's another thing that I find problematic is because they say that once Jesus died, you know, that's when the sacrifice was perfect, everything was done, no more need for sacrifices. Yet, even Christians, people who are identifiable as Christians in the New Testament, some 20, 30 years later are still offering sacrifices in the temple before the temple was destroyed. So, did they not get the memo? I'm kind of curious, you know.
Well, I guess it would have to. I guess it had to be a human blood that they just kind of forgot about.
Yeah, which should have been spread on the altar, right?
And the blood has to be on the altar. There's
not in a cup with a wafer that would be his body,
Well, you're not supposed to drink or eat human blood or meat or flesh anyway. So big trouble, big problem.
I still remember the day well, not the day, but I still remember the time when I first became disturbed by what I believed, and my salvation was at risk because of what I was learning. And I was thinking, wow, that's big. Glad that's all there was. And then it's like, that's not all there was. It just kept going. The dominoes just kept falling. And the whole entire thing just completely fell apart, And it's there's like hundreds of problems with the New Testament. I think the biggest problem people have is the Christians is they believe that in their Bible that the New Testament and what they call the Old Testament are supposed to be stitched together. But they're not. It was stolen, and the New Testament was added to it to make it look old. And if they could research that and like really wrap their head around that, that would be the very first thing to help them open their eyes, I think.
Remember that the Hebrew Scriptures gave an advantage to having the Christian New Testament attached to it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about in the pagan mind. Okay, in the pagan mind, they have all these gods, and there's a history to them, overthrowing the can't think of the name, the big gods, the adult, the father, parental god, what I can't remember. Okay, and then they get overthrown, and Zeus and all those people take over, or Jupiter, whatever you want to call them. Okay, but there's no attachment to creation. And by attaching the Christian New Testament to the Hebrew Scriptures and seeing them as a unit, which they couldn't be, but seeing them as a unit, it gives the advantage to the Hellenist mind of now joining a religion that still has dying, saving man gods, but takes them back all the way to creation and makes the creation an act of morals and ethics as opposed to capriciousness on the parts of gods who are fighting with each other. So there's a psychological advantage to attaching the Christian New Testament to the Hebrew Scriptures because they know that in the minds of their target people to be missionized, that it would be seen as a superior thing. All right? Why did they go to port cities? Because everybody was going in and out of the port city. There's a faster way to distribute the idea of their religion.
Right.
Why do people want to be on the internet? Because it's the faster way to distribute your belief, your ideology, or whatever point you really want to get across. Titans, Lisa for Truth, thank you. Titans get overthrown, the other gods take their place, so there's a history, but it doesn't go back to creation. Couldn't think of the word. Titans, thank you.
So the thing that people, I guess Christians need to understand is that Paul's writings came before the Gospels, like 30 years or so prior.
Yeah.
So imagine this. Jesus comes, right? Let me log in on this real fast. So Jesus comes, theoretically, and then Jesus dies, and supposedly the temple was destroyed because Jesus died and the Jews rejected Jesus. But then 30 years later, there's record in Paul's writings. It says, then Paul took the men, and the next day purifying themselves with them entered into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, and to that an offering should be offered for every one of them in the temple that they say was destroyed when Jesus died.
And they say that last part again?
I said this is the idea that Christians believe that the temple was destroyed and the veil of the temple was torn and the whole, one stone was not left unturned because of Jesus' death. But this is 30 years later, and they're still in the temple,
right?
Offering offerings and sacrifices, whatever, for purification or whatever the case might be. Right. How could that be if the temple was destroyed?
Right. Yeah, it was approximately 40 years later between Jesus on the cross and 70, the destruction of the temple.
Yeah.
And by the way, if it's 40 years, that is at least 2 generations, if not more.
Right.
Because a generation now is 20 years. Back then it was probably more like 15, 16, 17, something like that. So even if you said 20, that's 2 generations.
I think that if in the New Testament they could have documented the destruction of the temple, like at the same time that, like the Passion narrative. The Passion of the Christ movie, I think it was. It showed that whenever they executed him, the build, all the stones were tumbling, and a big earthquake, and everything just fell apart when he died. And so many Christians believe that is their gospel, even though they saw it on a movie instead of in the Bible. But that's what the Bible paints. They paint that picture, And so if they could get past that, I think they would have a better chance of really opening up.
By the way, it's also interesting. I mean, you could argue quite easily that Paul was a deceiver, and he did everything he could to make himself still look Jewish, even though he was spouting very non-Jewish, unbiblical ideologies. Okay? But it's still interesting that he's going to purify himself according to Jewish law. With this topic, I think I'm done. So.
Yeah. I mean, we could continue milking this, just going throughout the whole New Testament. I was so surprised to see how much Rabbi Skobach has been able to dissect out of the New Testament. I think our shows with Skobach, or my show with Skobach, has been going on for about 7 years now, just going through the New Testament, every chapter of the New Testament. We went through Matthew, and then we skipped Mark, Luke, and John for now. And then we went to, originally, and then we went to Acts, Romans, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and all the way through Revelation.
With Skobach?
Yeah, with Skobach. And with every single chapter of all those, and then we doubled back to hit Mark, and now we're actually in Luke. So after we finish Luke, we'll have John, and then our New Testament thing will be complete. It's been like 7 years worth of studies on this thing. And it's rich. It's really, really rich. I mean, he doesn't leave any stone unturned. It's pretty amazing. So.
Not surprised. Miriam, I did not realize that. This is 8:36 p.m. Miriam Levinson writes, Acts 21 talks about Christians taking the Nazirite vow, which required sin offerings when they were completed.
Interesting. But I think we're good.
Me too.
So if you want to take an early night and go sit back and spend some time with your lovely wife, I'll do the same with mine.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, very good. Well, so thank you for tuning in. Well, don't hang up yet. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording part for the public side, but we'll talk for a few more minutes in chat. So, Shalom, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on notifications, and don't forget to hit that like button. Peace. Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com. TaNaChTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה